So when it comes to the idea of a philosophy, a religion, you better stick with the facts. Stick with reality, not myth. That's the lesson that we've learned with all these Dark Age religions, the mess that they've made, and the confusion and the justifications for repression. And their justifications fall back on, you gotta believe in the myth. You gotta be scared about that myth. And, you gotta hold to it. Oh boy, you gotta hold to it. 21st century religion and your evolved intelligence, you cut through all that. You're not there anymore. You know there never was God. It was made up. They didn't know what a flood was. They didn't know what a volcano was. They didn't know what the Black Plague was. They didn't know much about anything. So they made it up. Something that was big that could know. They had the answers. They had the answers. Oh, geez, had the answer. Don't worry. We don't know, but it's that plan. They got a plan, you know? That kind of foolishness. And in doing so, they made up throwing in there. Women are second class. No homosexuals allowed. Racism. Justifications for violence against others. Just because they're not part of that little group. And then when you win against some violence against another group, what do they always say? God was on our side. The Nazis said God was on their side, you know. Hitler said he was chosen for a destiny. So you can't go with these things about myth anymore in the 21st century, you know, and say you're going to have religion, an understanding of what is, and the idea of what religion is, that it gives you that full view of what this whole thing is. What are you doing? That's what religion is. And from that understanding of, in other words, reality, you then shape community, government, personal relationships, all the rest of it. But you stick with reality, you don't go to myth. All those myth crap has led you astray into an abyss of suffering and needless confusion. There really is no confusion. Stick with reality. So reality is starting point. You're born here, you live for some duration, you die. All living species do it. And all living species have done it down through the whole millennia, millions and millions and millions of years of species. All of them. But born, live for some duration, and die. Just like humans and you are doing today. In other words, it's a big cavalcade of, not the form. The form isn't the issue. The form isn't the issue. The form was just an expression, a possibility. A huge variety of possibility. Oh, my goodness, have we seen a variety of possibility of what forms can look like? What do they do? But the lunatics, and relying on myth, go back and make up this thing that, see, this entity was up there like working day and night, you know, really fast though. And he's making all the species, making them up. Folks, that's ludicrous. And then they want to be selective. What about COVID-19? If you got God, the definition of God, right, should be everything. Everything. Death, cancer, hurricane, passionate love, sex, really, a lot of sex, yeah. Food, all type. Look at the variety of animals. Look at the variety of people. All of it. Heterosexual, homosexual, all of it. And therefore, all of it's equal. There's no judgment. Because if there was judgment, if there was preference, if there was bias, prejudice, then that isn't God. It wouldn't be everything. And to have everything and it has no agenda. And to have everything means it never was born. It never would die. It doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't have a concept linked to it. That's the only way you can define the word God. Everything. The galaxies that we've seen from Hubble Space Telescope photos. Beautiful things, and showing us that there's billions and billions of other galaxies just like ours. And all of them, just like ours, have billions of suns in them, just like our sun. And who knows how many more millions and millions and millions of other planets. And the distances are huge. Huge. And they keep going and going. Because we look at fact. We look at what we actually look at, observe, study, analyze. We don't rely on making stuff up of myth. Well, see, back then there's this big lump, see, it was just a big lump, oh yeah, and all around it was just, it was water. I don't know where the water came from, it was water, primordial. And see, on and on and on goes the stories. Made up. So you get led astray. Because you're supposed to still keep believing and have, some sort of attachment to these stories and what they mean in the whole thing. Which ends up being, you got to repress women, you deny equal rights to gays, you are racist, you stop and you justify violence against others because they're not part of your group. And all of it's really built on myth, lies, fantasies. And as you see, it can be put into action. You can say, it can work. The Catholic Church is still working. Got a lot of money. All these wacky Christian groups in America, they all got a lot of money. They're working. It's telling people a lot of myth, fantasy stories. It works. But it keeps them ignorant. It's built on keeping people ignorant and keeping people small-minded, within a little box. Because the religion says you stay within the box. And that's why these Dark Age religions don't like science. And particularly these Christian nuts in America. They don't like science. Oh, science. Because science kept by actually looking, actually studying, pulls the rug out from all these myths of religion. The earth is not the center of the universe. The earth rotates around the sun. We now know the length of time. Millions and millions into billions of years. That's astounding, right? And that's what screws up all those Dark Age religions. In particular, these Christian nuts are trying to tell you that, it started bingo bongo, and 6 days later, here we go, it's all here. And all this started about 6,000 years ago. It's not religion, it's ignorance. And that's what they're trying to teach people. Teach your kids. That's foolish. You can't have ignorant people in the 21st century believing this myth stuff. And all the dangerous, justifications that go along with it. It's time to get rid of that. Throw it out of government. Throw it out of tax-free status. That'll get them. I advocate giving them, they have to pay property tax. For this, at least they pay property tax for all these real estate holdings they have. That'll get them. You'll hear them squeak and squawk. But time is here. Time is now. Gotta happen. And you're not part of that mythic crap anymore anyway. You are reality. You are thinking in terms of reality, not myth. But that's why you see these really Republican nuts who believe in nothing but myth. And it's really the classic one, anonymous. Comes from an anonymous source. Like what's that one? The QAnon blood drinking group. They just sit there and they go on the internet. Somebody anonymously makes a little statement. And they turn it into the fantasy. And you find out that the whole fantasy is about violence and their fears and their total myths, lies, totally made up stuff. None of it's factual, no background to it. And they really get worked up about it. Myth. But you're not there. You want reality. You're born here, you live for some duration, you die, just like all other species. And you and all other living species are therefore the same. You're just in a different form. And the form, coming down to millions and millions of years of history, and the millions and millions and millions of variety of species, humans are just another one. And in that big cavalcade, you can see that all that diversity and whatnot, all of them did the same thing. Born here, lived for some duration, and died. Just like you. So the whole thing in the big view is it's never been about the form. The essence. Is there an essence? Because it's not about the form. The form is temporary. In fact, everything around you is temporary. This whole world we live in, there's summer, there's winter, there's fall. You go through the seasons. Change. There's changes in the weather patterns. There's changes going on all the time of this place. And on top of it, we as living things, we're temporary. Now, so if you stick to the thing of the reality and say this whole thing is transitory, even the very environment that we're living in, it's changing too. Then bingo bongo, you start to appreciate, okay, it's not about the form. And you look inside yourself and you say, your thoughts and emotions are the same way. They're transitory. And a lot of them have been indoctrinated stuff that you're just repeating, that you got from Dark Age religions and, propaganda, military propaganda or whatnot type of stuff. And not only your culture, your kids, your family you grew up with, and, all that stuff. All that stuff's also transitory. All that thinking in your mind is a transitory activity too. So the essence is within you, just as it's within every single living species, because they're doing the same thing. Born here, live for some duration, and die here. All of them are bound up in their little form of activity, and the activity they do is based upon their form. But in there, here in the 21st century, and now with video cameras and recording of all type, right? You've seen some amazing stuff that crosses that boundary of form, of animal and human, for example. An example recently is this movie, My Octopus Teacher, where a human actually crosses over and this octopus responds. They interact, recognize each other, and there's a feeling of trust. Even to the point, you would say, of affection kind of thing. Very moving, very beautiful thing to see. You've seen other ones where people have raised like a injured bear or a tiger or somebody. And so the tiger grows up with them and knows them, right? And then they release it back into the wild. And then if some years later, they go out and just to see also, they've managed to call the name the tiger or whatnot recognizes and comes back. And they greet, and he remembers, and it's loving, and it's friendly, and it's together, you know? They cross that border. So those entities, all these entities that we think of as, well, it's just an animal. They got the same kind of activity and thing in particular about affection, awareness, people, other things, you know, recognize other beings. And particularly if there's like this give and take, something, and it's all around you. And so instead of saying this fantasy, this fabrication, this God that was only about humans, because, you know, it was only made in the form of a human, you know, and so it's just like us and that, you know. Yeah, lunatic is that, right off the bat. Instead, it's all living things. It's a great equanimity. It's really... We all do this. Born here, live for some duration, and die. We all have these emotions and activities within us, but the form is temporary. And even the thing that we're living in is temporary. The environment we're in. I mean, you start with the facts. You stay there. If you're going to build religion, you don't go drifting off. And by staying with facts and staying with that, look what you come up with. There's an essence that's within you and all living things. And it's the same. And you, lucky one, can directly experience it, recognize it. Not just think about it, think, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, sure. Actually go in and you can directly recognize and experience it. That's pretty profound. You can know the essence. That's pretty profound. Isn't that what you want to know? Isn't that what religion should be about? Giving you the way, the path, the way to go, the education. Yeah, it's like graduate with your diploma. Your diploma is that you directly experience the essence, reality itself. And then, hey, that's a great thing to know. And to stay remembering and keep living in what the ramifications are. Well, it breaks down everything about prejudice and bias and all those myths. It throws out all that crap. It comes quite naturally to the reality of equal rights. It comes right around to the reality that you should be the economic system. You. It's an economics of you, to benefit you. Not business, not corporation, not some abstraction called profit. But they actually benefit you. And your kids, his kids, their family, and their kids. You're all the same. You have the same thing you're going to do. The only thing that's been separating you, look at what the ideas have been separating you. They're all made up. And because of that, you've all been fighting and killing and justifying brutality against each other needlessly. And in the 21st century, you're over that. You've outgrown that backward thinking. You recognize reality, equal rights, the economics of you. You're first. Economics, government is to benefit you. It's your air and water first. I mean, you're breathing, you're living, right? It's your air and water. Not a business, not a corporation. Any business that's poisoning your air, that's a criminal enterprise, damaging you. You close them down. You're first. And we have the technology and the scientific research to do this. We don't need to keep relying on the poison and toxicity of the Industrial Revolution. Oil, coal, nuclear power. Those are all toxic. Proven. Time to move on. And we can. Leave them behind. And in leaving that whole thing behind, you leave the economics of that behind as well. You have to. That type of economics just poisoned the whole planet. Put all this plastic in the oceans. Toxins into your air and in your water. You got to let go of that. In the same way, you got to let go of those dark age religions as well. They've been holding you back, filling you with myth and lies, justifications for brutality, discrimination. You're in the 21st century, you get it. And all you got to do is stay with reality. Stay with reality.